your lesson. We're on week 6 already, which now you're halfway through your this quarter, which is amazing. Next week we are going to have our first exam, our second exam, exam 2. Recordings for them have already been posted. You have 3 of them already in your announcements. In the announcements where it says exam 2 review recordings, I will always edit that. And I will always put the new person in. So the last one is going to be Professor Morris tomorrow morning, okay? Mine is already there, and I've already put the Kahoots there. So everything you need to study is all in one place, okay? So that's there for you. This week, well, hello, that little cutie patooties. I love kids, seeing them. It's like, hi. So this week, there's quite a few assignments also due. We do have your quiz 4, which after class, getting all of the lecture, you're going to be able to do okay on it because I do cover all of that. That's what I try to do with your quizzes. You also have NCLEX questions, and then you have a case study for congenital heart disease, and you also have your cystic fibrosis. The cystic fibrosis one has some really key information that you're going to see on the exam. So pay attention to it, okay? Any questions from anybody? I appreciate you all sitting tight and holding up for me. I don't know who texted me, but I appreciate that. Taylor, Patrice, and Chris, if you could turn on your cameras, I'd appreciate it. What Dean Brown is doing, she's popping into classes and seeing who is on cameras, and she's taking note of it. And she is informing the campuses and the deans that this person was in class, didn't participate, or they were cameras were off, or they were pointed to the ceiling. So I'm just warning you, she's doing that, okay? So, we know sometimes we have to. Sometimes we have to just turn it on because, things are going on. I get it. There is life. Like what happened to me tonight, it's just life. I get it. So no problem. As long as I know what's going on, cameras off, I'm okay. I told you, I don't care if you eat, drink. I get that. It's, most of you have come from another class, I believe. Were you at community before this, a lot of you?
Yeah, we had our exam.
How was your exam? I'm seeing grades like this when I go to these dean's meetings. So I know that I've heard some classes say it was easier than exam 1. And then I see other students saying that, Anyway, well, again, go to your professors, find out what's going on and work with them because, we all do want you to succeed. Anybody who wants to meet with me before exam 2, I have no problem doing that. And you are next Friday, so I can do it during next week with you also, okay? All I request is look at one of the reviews, at least one, figure out what you're not getting or understanding. Come to me and I can make it in a simple way that you can understand it, okay? That, when you look at that concept, how do I apply it? What does that mean to me? What am I looking for, okay? So I can help you, but you have to ask, okay? And always students take priority over any meeting or anything, okay? So let's go today. We are going to be going over hematology, immunology, and some cancer. And I have a Kahoots. I may or may not be able to get to it. But if that happens, I did a Kahoots on Tuesday evening with my class. And I think the way I explained it, when you do a couple different classes, one you like the better, you think you explained it better. That was my Tuesday night class. So I will share that with you anyway. So let's go ahead and get to our PowerPoint. Any questions, anybody, before we start? Tonight my husband is at a birthday of a friend that he's had since kindergarten. And he hasn't seen him in a couple of years due to COVID. So it was important for him to be here. And as much as I still don't feel well from last week, and you can still hear it in my voice, I had to be here for him. It's like what you do for the people you love, right? So that's why I was a little bit discombobulated today. Okay, talking about hematology, immunology, talking about what do we look at? What are symptoms we're going to see? Well, number one, hematology, probably the most common, and even the immunology, if it's chronic infections, is they just don't feel good. They're always lack of energy. Kids usually bounce off the walls and they're all over the place. I mean, my 5-year-old grandson, he is like ready to go and can't sit as I was sitting here trying to get my computer going to talk to you. And I want to go. And when they're sitting in the corner and they're not moving, something's wrong. We know that. Kids like to move. That's what they do. They have ants in their pants, as I call it. So when you hear that, part of that history, I mean, you might see bruising, petechiae, nosebleeds, chronic fevers, upper respiratories. It needs to be investigated if it's like all the time happening. So that's part of the history physical you'll see. So we will do a CBC. CBC is a very simple exam on newborns. It's 0.4 mLs of blood, so it's nothing to get. And it's really quick, we get results. What do we see on the CBC? White counts, which show what? Infection. If it's elevated, or even if it's too low, that's leukemia. You're going to be seeing hemoglobin hematocrit. That's telling you blood in your body. That's actually showing your energy, your red blood cells. What do red blood cells do? Well, they carry oxygen and iron to the body. It's feeding it. It's actually nutrition for your body. So not enough red blood cells, which is hemoglobin hematocrit. It's going to be that I don't have any energy. And that decreased white cells or increased is showing you something's going on there. So anemia, most common of all of the hematological disorders in children, and there's many different types of anemia. Next slide is basically going to show it. But anemia, why do we look at it? What is it going to do to the kid? Well, it is food for the cell. It's oxygen, right? No oxygen, you have no energy. Iron gives you that strength, Popeye. I mean, I got strength, I can get up and I can move. Not enough iron, again, you're going to be tired. And if a child has no energy and is tired, they're not going to eat right. They're not going to have proper nutrition. What's going to happen? They're not going to grow, which we'll see on that height and weight that we do every visit. And, that child's going to have cognitive delays. So very important that we have a hemoglobin hematocrit good enough to support the body. And there are different types. We'll go into it. Now, they say in children, a hemoglobin less than 10 is what we call anemia. In adults, it could be 8 before we consider it. So types of anemia: decreased red blood cell production, increased red blood cell loss, or increased red blood cell destruction. So the cells aren't being produced good enough. That's usually nutritional. Number one, iron deficient anemia. And the other thing we look at is B12, intrinsic factor in the stomach. We don't have these things, the body's not getting nutrition. Again, you're not going to grow. You're going to be cognitively delayed in those younger children, so it must be replaced. Nutrition, how do we replace it? Feed them better and give those proper vitamins they need, or iron. The other one is bone marrow failure. They don't produce enough cells. We'll see this in aplastic anemia. Aplastic anemia is when, and the one that we look at, because there's 2 types, is decreased white cells, red cells, and platelets. So that's infection that is bleeding problems. And then acute lymphocytic leukemia and cancers also due to the chemo that we're giving to them. Now, increased red blood cell, you're bleeding somewhere. When you think of bleeding, you think of hemophilia, right? That's a loss of a factor. Whether factor 8, 9, von Willebrand, you don't have everything you need to clot the blood. Usually that diagnosis is usually looked at being suspicious when we see all those epistaxis, nosebleeds. Chronic nosebleeds, you are going to be investigating. One, yeah, no, but as it 3, 4 a month, yes, we're going to look at it. And that's usually how we'll diagnose like hemophilia, even something called ITP, immune thrombocytopenia purpura, immune thrombocytopenia purpura. P, platelets, decreased platelets. Platelets are part of the bleeding cascade. You don't have platelets, it's not going to stop bleeding. And I don't get all into DIC, but that's a very sick child or adult, and it has to do usually with overwhelming sepsis and trauma, et cetera. But I'm not going into that because that's way too much information. Increase red blood cell destruction. That means the cells are produced. Okay, they're fine, they're produced, but they die quickly. The number one that we think of is sickle cell disease. Now, sickle cells got those crooked sickle cell shapes, but they burst quickly. So children and adults with sickle cell disease will have low hemoglobin hematocrits, which means they're tired, they don't have enough energy. The younger children are not going to eat well, they're going to be growth delay, and they're going to be cognitive delays. Makes sense. The other one is called thalassemia. Now, sickle cell, African-American descendants. Thalassemia is descendants from the areas around the Mediterranean Sea. So these are two things in the history that we might ask. Now, thalassemia, those cells burst a lot, and these are square or rectangular shaped cells, and they burst. Well, what's in a red blood cell? Oxygen and iron. So depletion of oxygen, lack of energy. Iron's not getting to the body, then you're going to see that tiredness. But that iron that's being spewed inside those blood vessels can become to the point where it needs treated. It can be lethal, fatal. And then we also have it when we're getting therapy for cancer, et cetera. They are toxic to the body. They kill the bad cells, but they kill the good cells too. So anemia, what do we see? What's that consequence? Well, in the blood volume, there's very few cells. So when we suspect anemia, we're going to see an elevated heart rate. That's absolute, because the body wants